The Young and the Restless spoilers here is a fully fleshed out English narrative based closely on your supplied beats, expanded into a coherent, emotionally resonant scene. It runs over 5,000 characters and deepens motivations, descriptions, and dramatic tension to bring the moment vividly to life. Alan leaned against the edge of the marble counter in Tracy's softly lit living room, his knuckles white as he twisted the silver band on his wedding finger. He'd just confessed that he couldn't understand why she'd changed her mind, changed everything between them. "I don't get what made you think differently," he said, voice taut with frustration. "Maybe someone said something to you, something that turned your head." He ran a hand through his hair, eyes darting to the floorboards as if clues might be hiding in the grain. Tracy stood a few feet away, her arms wrapped around herself as though she were trying to hold her own heart together. She watched Alan warily, remembering the warmth they once shared in this very room. Finally, she stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. "Alan, I know you're hurting," she said, her hand reaching out to brush his sleeve. "And I know you need time to sort through all this." Without another word, she rose on tiptoe and pressed a gentle kiss to his cheek. "Take whatever time you need," she whispered. "I'll wait for you." He nodded once, stiffly, then turned and walked toward the door. As his footsteps faded down the hallway, Tracy closed her eyes and exhaled a shuddering breath. The instant the door clicked shut behind him, Jack strode into the room from the adjoining study, his broad shoulders casting a shadow across the Persian rug. He paused in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "He's not as innocent as you think," Jack said quietly. He tried to pin the blame on someone else. Tracy's eyes filled with tears, but she lifted her chin defiantly. "He didn't stumble once," she protested. "Not a single misstep." But then her gaze dropped, and she admitted in a broken voice, "When I looked into his eyes just now, all I saw was sadness." From the sofa, Ashley sat forward, her elbows on her knees. "Tracy, I've known Alan for years," she said gently, "and that wasn't him." She shook her head, swallowing hard. "I'm so sorry, but this has been Martin all along." Tracy's shoulders collapsed as fresh tears slipped down her cheeks. "Martin," she whispered, as if the name itself were poison. "How could I have been so blind?" Ashley reached out and clasped Tracy's hand. "When you were on the phone yesterday," she said, "I thought I heard his voice, Martin's voice, coming through the line." She swallowed. "He was trying to convince you he was someone else." Tracy closed her eyes, the memory of that distorted tone making her chest ache. "It made me sick," she admitted. "Because deep down I knew exactly who it was. It was him. The man who attacked me." Her voice trembled with the weight of that realization. He's the one who hurt me, Tracy." Silence fell, thick and heavy, broken only by the muffled ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Then the front door burst open, and Chance, his expression grim, strode into the room, badge gleaming at his belt. "Dr. Laurent," Chance said, voice cold but controlled, as he turned toward the frail-looking man who'd followed him in. The doctor, in a crisp white coat that had seen better days, looked ashen. "I need to ask you some questions." Dr. Laurent swallowed, his eyes darting nervously between the women and the detective. I suppose I can help," he stammered. "But I'm not sure what." Chance held up a hand. "Start with the farmhouse outside of town. The one you leased last month." His tone left no room for evasion. "Who rented it? Who paid for it?" The doctor's gaze flicked to Ashley, then to Jack, and finally settled on Tracy, whose face was pale but resolute. He took a slow breath. "It was rented by someone from our clinic in Paris," he said at last, voice barely above a whisper. "A patient who requested absolute anonymity. He insisted on paying in cash." Chance nodded, pulling out a small notepad. "Name?" The doctor's hand trembled as he reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a folded slip of paper and handed it to Chance. "He called himself Martin Dubois," Dr. Laurent said, his voice cracking. "But I have reason to believe that's not his real name." Chance glanced down at the note, an address, a phone number scrawled in an unsteady hand. He tucked it into his notebook and looked up. "We'll follow every lead," he promised. Then, to Tracy, his tone softened. "You did the right thing by telling us. We'll find him." Tracy nodded, blinking back fresh tears. Jack moved to stand beside her, sliding an arm around her shoulders. Ashley gave Tracy's hand a reassuring squeeze. The three of them formed a small circle of solidarity. Outside, the rain began to patter against the windows, as if the sky itself mourned the dark truths that had been unearthed. But inside, despite the fear and the pain, a spark of hope glowed. They had the name. They had a lead. And together, they would see justice done. Phyllis had been pacing the long, dimly lit corridor of the Genoa City mansion for what felt like an eternity. Every step echoed her anxious heartbeat as she prepared herself for the conversation that would shatter the fragile calm of the afternoon. The saboteurs of Y&R had been whispering secrets and long-hidden truths, and now it was time for her to reveal them to Summer, her daughter, whose world was about to be turned upside down. In the plush sitting room, Summer sat on a velvet settee, her hands folded neatly on her lap. The air was thick with an unspoken tension that had slowly built over the past weeks. Finally, Phyllis entered the room, her expression grave yet resolute. The older woman took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts before she began to speak in a measured, low tone. "Summer," Phyllis started, pausing as she locked eyes with her daughter. "There are some things I need to tell you, things I've learned from Chance. You deserve to know the truth." Summer's eyes widened, a mix of curiosity and apprehension shimmering in them. "What is it, Mom? What have you heard?" she asked, her voice wavering slightly. Phyllis sank into the armchair opposite her daughter, clasping her hands together as if to steady herself. "It's about Alan and Martin." She hesitated for a moment, gauging Summer's reaction before continuing. "I've been told that Alan might not be who you think he is anymore. In fact, it appears that he could have, possibly even died, and Martin, yes, Martin, has been impersonating him." The words fell like shards of broken glass into the quiet room. Summer's breath hitched, and for a long, painful moment, she was silent. Then she spoke, her voice trembling with disbelief and horror. "You're telling me that the same man who kidnapped you, tortured you, and even lived in the same house with my son?" Her words tumbled out in a rush, mingling incredulity with raw fear. How could that be possible? Phyllis reached out and squeezed Summer's hand, trying to anchor her daughter in the midst of the storm of revelations. "Don't worry, sweetheart," she said softly, her tone gentle yet firm. "He doesn't live there anymore. It seems he's gone, and we have to accept that as the reality." The shock of this news rippled through Summer like a tidal wave. In the recesses of her mind, memories began to swirl, half-forgotten moments and whispers of fear that she had tried so hard to bury. But the conversation was far from over. As the truth began to settle in, the narrative took an unexpected turn. A long silence followed before Summer, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, finally spoke about another aspect of her life, a side that was intertwined with her tangled past and uncertain future. "There's something else," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "Chance and I, we ended our relationship." She paused, her gaze dropping to the floor as if the words were a heavy burden. "I think Chance realized that perhaps I haven't completely forgotten Kyle." At the mention of Kyle's name, a small, knowing smile crept across Phyllis's face. For a moment, the tension in the room eased as Phyllis's laughter mingled with the bittersweet admission of Summer. But the laughter was quickly tempered by Summer's more probing question. "You mean," she said slowly, looking up with a mixture of irony and sorrow, "he won't try to flirt with Kyle, will he?" Phyllis's smile widened, and she shook her head. "No, darling. Chance knows that some wounds never truly heal, and no matter how much we try to forget, the past will always find a way to resurface. It seems that fate has its own plans for us." The older woman's tone was gentle but carried an undercurrent of regret and understanding. Summer's mind raced with the implications of everything she had just learned. The betrayal of identities, the horror of the past, and the painful reminders of lost love all coalesced into a single overwhelming reality. She recalled the days when she had trusted Alan implicitly, the life they had shared, and the comfort she had once felt in his presence. Now, the possibility that the man she loved might have been replaced by a monster, or worse, that he was gone forever, sent shivers down her spine. For a moment, the room was filled with the silent hum of unspoken questions and fears. The faint ticking of a grandfather clock punctuated the heavy air as each second seemed to stretch into an eternity. Summer's thoughts wandered to the dark corners of her memory, recalling the terrifying night when she had first encountered the man who had haunted her dreams, Martin. The man who, with his smooth charm and sinister secrets, had once made her feel both safe and utterly vulnerable. "I don't know what to think," Summer admitted softly, her voice laced with uncertainty. "All this, it's too much to take in. I always believed that the person I knew was real, that the trust we built was genuine. And now I'm faced with the possibility that everything was a lie." Her eyes filled with tears as she struggled to come to terms with the magnitude of the revelations. Phyllis leaned in closer, her own eyes reflecting a mixture of sympathy and resignation. "I understand, Summer," she murmured. "Sometimes the truth is more painful than the fiction we tell ourselves. But it's the truth that gives us the power to move forward, even if it means facing some of the darkest parts of our past." Summer's gaze shifted between her mother and the empty space where the comfortable familiarity of her old life once resided. The silence that followed was filled with memories of laughter, love, and betrayal. "What do I do now?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "How do I reconcile all these truths?" Before Phyllis could respond, another memory surfaced in Summer's mind, a memory of Chance, whose steady presence had once been her anchor in the storm. The thought of him now, distant and lost, gnawed at her heart. "I thought Chance was my safe harbor," she whispered. "But maybe he, too, realized that I haven't let go of Kyle. Perhaps deep down, I'm still clinging to the ghost of someone who can never be reclaimed." Phyllis's laughter returned, this time tinged with a bittersweet humor. "It's a funny thing about love and loss, isn't it?" she mused. "We think we've moved on, yet the echoes of the past remind us that some bonds are too strong to break completely." Her eyes sparkled with a mixture of amusement and pity. Maybe Chance recognized that the heart has a mind of its own, one that sometimes refuses to let go, no matter how much logic and reason try to insist otherwise. Summer managed a small smile, the corners of her lips trembling as she considered the possibility. "You might be right," she conceded. "Perhaps Chance knew I wasn't ready to forget. But it still hurts, knowing that even when I try to leave the past behind, it finds me again in the most unexpected ways." In that quiet moment, the weight of their shared history pressed down upon them. Phyllis reached over and gently squeezed Summer's hand, offering a silent promise that no matter what truths the future might unveil, they would face them together. The two women sat in contemplative silence, the gravity of their conversation mingling with the soft hum of the rain tapping against the window panes. As the afternoon waned into twilight, the conversation took on an air of inevitability. Phyllis knew that while the revelations were painful, they were also a necessary step toward healing, a way to untangle the web of deceit that had ensnared their lives for so long. "We must remember," Phyllis said softly, "that truth, however harsh, is the only thing that can set us free." Summer nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting both sorrow and determination. "I just hope that one day I can find a way to forgive," she murmured. "To forgive not only those who have hurt me but also myself for holding on to the past for so long." The conversation continued deep into the evening, the flickering light of the fireplace casting dancing shadows on the walls. Phyllis and Summer talked about lost loves, shattered dreams, and the tentative hope that even in the darkest of times, a new beginning was possible. They recounted memories of happier days. Days when trust had been unblemished and the future seemed full of promise. Phyllis's voice softened further as she recounted her own journey of heartache and redemption, offering words of wisdom that only someone who had weathered so many storms could provide. Sometimes, she said, we need to lose everything we thought was real to discover what truly matters. And sometimes, the person we see as our greatest adversary is simply a mirror reflecting the parts of ourselves we're afraid to acknowledge. Summer listened intently, absorbing every word as if it were a lifeline thrown across a chasm of despair. You mean to say, she asked hesitantly, that maybe I need to face my own demons before I can truly move on? Phyllis nodded, her eyes gleaming with a quiet certainty. Yes, darling. Only when we confront the painful truths within us can we hope to find peace. And perhaps, in time, even forgiveness. As the night drew to a close, the bond between mother and daughter grew stronger in the shared acknowledgement of their vulnerabilities. Though the path ahead was uncertain, the revelations of the day had lit a small beacon of hope, one that might, in time, guide them out of the labyrinth of secrets and sorrow that had defined their lives. Standing by the window as the first light of dawn began to break, Summer whispered to herself, I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know that I cannot live in the shadow of yesterday forever. In that moment, she resolved to take the first tentative steps toward rebuilding a life defined not by the ghosts of the past, but by the promise of a brighter tomorrow. The revelations about Alan, Martin, and even the complexities of her relationship with Chance were threads in a tapestry that was still being woven, one that would require courage, resilience, and ultimately, forgiveness. And as Summer watched the sunrise, she allowed herself a small, hopeful smile, ready to face the unknown with a heart that, though scarred, still believed in the possibility of love and redemption.